Okay, hello. So today we're gonna go over status effects and the most common ones and how they affect things. So that being said, let's go ahead and get the video started. As I missed my upload, so my apologies for that. So, so these are your status effects that will usually counter accuracy down. Obviously, accuracy is reduced. Uh, Situational amnesia. Um, you'll usually run into this at like Palace of the Dead or something like that. Blind is more of a common status effect you'll run into in the game. Or bind, I mean, sorry. But bind is a common status effect you'll move into the game. Just it really depends. Bleed, um, again, very situational. Usually, it is a ground AOE dealing sustained damage over time, or it's a raid AOE that has to be healed through. Blind, obviously, you'll run into that one a lot. It lowers your accuracy, so um, it'll miss. So blunt resistance. Increases the damage taken by affected player. So, very again very situational. Brink of death, obviously. It's every Law says strength, dex, intelligence, mind are reduced by 50% for their duration. Um, it's usually if they have if the player has weakness and they die while they have weakness active. Brush of Death, that's only on Blue Mage. That's the only time you'll encounter it. Blue Mage has skills where they can basically blow themselves up, or use spells to do heavy damage to a boss. So that's the only time you'll run into that one. Burns, again, very situational. Uh, I think like one of the more common times that you'll run into this one would be the first time should be in Halatali dungeon if you've unlocked that one. Um, that one you'll run into. It's basically a ground. It's a ground effect. It applies to debuff. Charm. Now charm, I believe, running into this one, well, might be within the Stormblood expansion. The more common way to run that's just the more common way to run into it is the Primal Lakshmi uses charm. So uh, definitely a uh, definitely a common AOE or common debuff. So let's move on to the second set of debuffs. Deep freeze. Okay, deep freeze. Obviously, you're going to run into this one maybe with the Chimera in Cutter's Cry. That might be your first time with it. Um, it basically freezes you in place, so your healer has to heal through it. Disease. So disease is very the I think the time you'll run into disease is the first time maybe is within Labyrinth of the Ancients, and it decreases your movement speed and your HP recovery. So you just have to be careful. Um, okay, Doom. Okay, let's talk about Doom. Obviously, the most common thing. Doom's been a common Final Fantasy thing. Uh, you know, and it's very situational. Doom is very situational. So there's various ways that Doom can be solved. So the the first time that you should run into Doom in a dungeon would be in the Sunken Temple of Karn. And you have to resolve it by stepping on the glowy pads. So that's the only way it can be resolved, and the debuff can be taken off in that dungeon. Um, it's the same for World of Darkness. If you're the first boss, the giant eyeball. So what it does is it has a spell called Mortal Gaze, and if you don't have, what you can do to see if a excuse me, if a boss is going to cast a spell, is you can click on the boss, you can focus target, and there'll be a little bar over there, so you can see if the boss is casting off that spell. So if in the world of darkness, if the eyeball is casting Mortal Gaze, and there's two ways to avoid it. One, you can turn around to avoid the mechanic altogether. Or two, if you do get hit with the mechanic, you have to step on little glowy pads to remove it. Um, Now, Doom is very situational and some other content as well. It's more so toward raids and etc. So sometimes your HP gets dropped down. I think like the time it in the Shadowbringers expansion. It's when you fight the Warrior Light Primal, basically. Uh, Spoilers, by the way, for anybody who's got this far. But yeah, it's when you fight that, and your healers have to heal you back up fully. So Doom is kind of one of those spells that it's multiple it's multiple instances, and how it's resolved is very different. Sometimes your healers have to heal you to full health. Sometimes they just have to Asuna the debuff off of you. Um, I think like one of the places that they can Asuna the debuff off is one of the Heavensward 24-man raids. Um, and they're also just Amarok comes to mind in Shadowbringers, which is one of the close to one of the original last dungeons for the before the rest of the expansion. So, because if you stand in the flames in Amarok, it will pop Doom on you, and there's no way to resolve that other than being out of it. So, it's just, again, it's very situational. Um, Down for the count. Think like the time you'll run into this one is during a Heaven's War dungeon. The mammoth uses a little suck in spell, and and just hits you with it and then charges you. So and it's the same everywhere. So it's not it's not something situational. It's the same when it happens. Uh, Dropsy. So you should run into this one during. Um, I want to say um, the two dungeons I know of. I think is Hullbreaker Isle or or the Sea of Clouds. Cannot remember the name of the dungeon right now. My apologies. But the time that you'll run into the dropsy, it's a ground effect. Just stay out of the ground effect, because you sustain damage over time. Earth resistance. I think you'll run into this. I think during Stormblood with the primal Shinryu, the dragon. You'll run into that. Electrocution deals sustained lightning damage over time occasionally. With the ground effect. It's either you'll run into this with Ramu during a Realm Reborn, or the Ramu and Ixion during Shadowbringers, the one of the 8-man raids, or the new raid in Dawn Trail uh, with Thixion. Uh, I don't know, I can't remember her name, but I'm calling her Thixion, so that's what she is. But you'll run into that. So, uh, again, fire resistance down, increases. It's pretty much self-explanatory. Frostbite. You're going to sustain deal damage. Over time. Uh, and it has to be healed through. Uh, okay, heavy. So heavy is one of those spells where uh, it can be Asuna'd uh, with any healer, or you have to be out of the ground AoE that's causing it. So um, it's just it's situational again. Hysteria. Uh, basically, basically it's like confusion, but you're just running in circles and just losing your shit. Um, all right, let's move on to the next set of debuffs. So that being said, you know, we have ice resistance down, obviously. You know, infirmity. Reduces healing received by the target. Um, interrupt. Um, this is more of a interrupt is more of a tank machinist or a dancer and bard, I believe. But it's more common on machinist and dancer. But it but yeah, now you can interrupt an ongoing cast. Uh, that would otherwise inflict silence or like do some damage. Lightning resistance down, obviously. That speaks for magic vulnerability up. Okay, what magic vulnerability up does is magic damage taken is increased, and the stacking icon is different depending on where you're at. Misery. Um, Damage taken is increased with misery. And here's the thing you can do with misery. So if a player is affected with misery, you can actually use the slash comfort emote to actually remove the debuff, and any player can do this if someone has it. So pacification, pacification basically. You're a pacifist. You're not using any weapons. You're not using any skills for the duration that it's effective. So just hope that you avoid paralysis. Uh, Paralysis is one of those big things, and you wouldn't think that paralysis would do such a lot of damage to you, but depending on what content you're doing, paralysis could do some major damage. So it's something to be careful about. So petrification. Petrification is again a situational. And most of the times, the way you'll avoid petrification is you'll turn around um, to avoid the mechanic that would cause it, or your healer will assume it, providing that they know to do that. Um, Again, very situational, but very easy to resolve. Physical vulnerability up. Physical damage is increased. Um, if you've ever heard you've ever heard people say or talk about bone stacks, that's what they're talking about, and we're going to get to that. So poison, deals sustained damage over time. Depending where you are, it can be very damaging. Reduced immunity, HP recovery's down. So seduced. And this is what I was talking about. I don't think I was thinking about the emote charmed. I was thinking about seduced. So basically, what you'll do is the first time that you would encounter seduced, I believe, is within Ramu, or if you're doing Tamtara hard mode. Um, and you'll encounter it on the last boss. Usually, silence. You don't want to get hit with silence if you're a caster. Um, Slashing resistance. Damage. Increases slashing damage. Sleep. Now, here's the thing about sleep. So, say you got a tank pulling multiple mobs, and you just need a moment to get you just need a moment to get your bearings just for a second while you're keeping up with them. So here's what you're going to do: is you can use Swift Cast and sleep when the tank stops to put some of the mobs to sleep to give your healer a chance to hit heal your tank or something if they're having trouble keeping up. Um, Again, very situational. It really depends on when and where and how you want to use it. Slow, obviously it's going to decrease movement and your skills and everything, and it does happen. Sludge. So sludge, it deals with damage over time. The first time you'll run into this is the second boss on Cutter's Cry. Stun. You'll run into this one all the time if you're not careful. Vulnerability up. You will run into this one consistently. Uh, it's just the way it is. If you've ever heard somebody talk about bone stacks, or you've watched a YouTube video talking about bone stacks, this is what they're talking about. Um, Water resistance down. Obviously, it's the same as dropsy, but it's water damage taken. Weakness. Weakness is when you die, and that's what we were talking about earlier. Is when you die and then you're coming back from the brink of death. Um, and then you die again, and then it's brink of death. So here's the next one: is wind resistance down and wind burn. So it increases again. Very situational. You may run into this one. Let's say on in Endwalker, uh, with the Wind Primal. I can't pronounce her name. Barbicia or something. Again, I probably butchered that. My apologies. Or Garuda, something like that. Uh, or the redone Garuda and Shadowbringers, or um, yeah, yeah, or or Garuda in extreme mode, depending on if you're doing it synced or not. Just it's again, it's really situational, so you may or may not run into that. Now this doesn't cover all of these. These are just like some of more of the more common ones. So whoever it is out there, and if anybody has sees this video, I really hope that helps explain a few things to you, and uh, and helps you understand a little bit more of this. And here's another thing, guys, and this is what I was explaining to a person today, another person I met today, which pretty cool person. Is if you're a mentor on this game, you have even more of a duty to be upstanding, and like you shouldn't be yelling at people. You shouldn't be telling them that they need to get good or whatever. You should be helping them. Now, here's the thing with mentors, guys. Not all mentors are bad, and I know we all have ran into our fair share of them who are. It's just like bad cops with a badge. Sometimes people get them who shouldn't have them, and unfortunately, we run into that. But speaking up and saying something is the biggest thing you can do, guys. Is because you don't let people like that get away with things, or tell you that hey, because you don't know your job, you're going to be laughed at. Like that's not right, and it's not what this game should be about. This game should be about people having friendships and helping one another. We shouldn't be sitting here and judging one another on skill level. Just because you've done something synced and somebody wants to do it unsynced, that doesn't mean that you're any better than they are. That means that they just have a different way of playing than you do, and just because they don't enjoy it one way doesn't mean they should have to enjoy it your way. And that's the biggest thing about this game is we all enjoy it in our own way. um but yeah, so if you haven't, just Please like the video. If you do, subscribe to the content. I'll be putting more out. So thank you guys very much, and I appreciate it. Goodbye.